next, right, to the next section of today's session, right, would be a coffee side chat. So if you've got your coffee, feel free, get some. All right, I'm very pleased to introduce your moderator and the participants of our panel discussion / coffee side chat on the topic technology investment costs versus value to your business, benefits and pitfalls. Our moderator is Jake Saunders, Managing Director and Vice President, Asia Pacific and Advisory Services. Jake heads up the ABI Research's Asia Pacific Research Division, in which he devotes attention to the Asian markets carrier strategy, both cellular and satellite, telecommunications infrastructure vendors, mobile device vendors, and chipset manufacturers. Quite a mouthful, and over to you, Jake. Quote of the year one more time. We are on mute.
That's what I was testing. So, Edwin, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Good. Okay, well, let's crack on then. So thank you for all joining. My name is Jake Saunders, and I'm Vice President Managing Director at ABI Research. ABI Research is a market research and telecom consulting company, and we cover a number of emerging tech areas. So I've been given the privilege of leading this panel session, moderating a number of discussions. Today's panel session is going to be looking at how to cope with the aftershock, how the last mile fulfillment, how that needs to be adjusted in this new normal world, and how we go beyond that. So yes, we have this word, new normal. I think it's probably now in the dictionary. Whether it should be hyphenated or made into one big extra long word is perhaps up for debate. But we're going to delve into a number of issues revolving around last mile fulfillment, as well as also some other issues about how enterprise prepare themselves for this new normal. So we have an esteemed panel. We have Miss Fanny C. We've already had your presentation. How are you doing, Fanny?
I'm good. Thanks for asking, Jake. Yes.
Thank you. So Fanny is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at Detrack. And I remember meeting you about a couple of years ago at the IoT Asia, I think 2018. So quite clearly you're busy and things are moving forward. We're also joined by Aditya Halan. Aditya, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfectly fine. Hello, everyone.
Hello. So Aditya is Chief Technology Officer at Floship, and Aditya brings 15 years of technology domain experience and industry knowledge across multiple startups such as General Data, Helper4U, Fleck App, Zeneto, OK Sir, and Floship. So how long have you been at Floship?
It's been only 3 months right now. I've just recently joined them.
Gosh, so you've been very busy then as we go to adjust through this period of the new COVID reality. And last but certainly not least, we also have Edwin Lee. How are you doing?
Yep. Hi, Jake. Yep, doing well. Thanks.
Very good, sir. Edwin is Group Head of Corporate Technology at ViewQwest. Edwin drives innovation strategy and growth for ViewQwest. He has more than 15 years of experience in front of office environments, and prior to joining ViewQwest, served as regional leadership roles at IBM, VMware, SAP, and BlackBerry. So that's the introductions over. I think now we're going to have an interactive session. There are going to be some polls, and we also encourage our audience to participate. I would highly suggest you put any questions into the Q&A panel session. I already see a number already in there, so we're going to be addressing those questions in the sort of the second half of the overall panel group discussion. But let's put up the first panel. So if we could have the first polling question, please. So this is an opportunity to also engage in the discussion. So the first question is, do you consider the impact of COVID in Asia will be in the first quarter of 2021? Do you consider it to be down year on year, to be essentially stable year on year, or whether it will be up year on year? So take your time. I will get the ball rolling on with the panel discussion, and we'll come back to visit the answers to that particular question. So, we've seen a roller coaster ride as COVID has taken its impact across the entire region. But I think what perhaps we can dig into, Fanny, is, supply and logistics is plugged into a number of parts of the economy. So in your view, what sort of sectors have been substantially impacted by COVID? What sort of sectors perhaps have been holding their own or even been boosted from COVID?
Okay. I feel that the consumer-facing sectors such as retail and food services, and they definitely have been hit pretty hard by COVID, especially due to the cut down in domestic consumption amidst and progressively safe distancing measures, especially during the circuit breaker time. I feel that at the same time, the disruption of the supply chain have also impacted the retail sector quite badly. So that's my take. So mainly for the retail and the food services, I think they have been hit pretty hard.
And Aditya, has that been your experience as well, or what's your view?
So I agree to Fanny completely, and to add on to that, travel, anything to do with consumer facing, which is the local experience, has been hit very badly. On the other side, companies where e-commerce and all taking a boost, but overall, as an industry, from except banking, financials, and logistics and e-commerce, I think most of the industries have taken a hit during this whole pandemic.
Right. So, I mean, Edwin, I imagine from your perspective, when the pandemic hit at ViewQwest, it had your own sort of challenges and issues. So, with work from home and Zoom calls like we're just doing now, there's been a substantial investment in infrastructure and logistics. What are some of the challenges that ViewQwest has had to address over the last 4 to 5 months?
Well, all the customers had, it doesn't matter what industry you come from, they're facing the same challenges, right? So sudden 100% of your workforce is working from home now, right? And a lot of the design, so the minor investments, I would say it's more of a lot of the work we did was consulting. They need to look at how their data, their apps are structured, so that all these 100% of working from home employees can access them, right? Because otherwise there's it's sort of like a supply and demand as well. So not that much on the investment side, but more of a redesign and rethinking of how the businesses have to do things.
So we've perhaps seen that sort of the resolution, the video streams. Has there been a need for boosting capacity as people's demand for higher quality video streams?
Yep. Absolutely.
Incrementally built up.
Yep. We saw a 60% increase in demand for more capacity and even an extra internet circuit for companies just to bear with the load of everyone working from home. And then the other one was more for work from home solutions, right? Anything that's VPN related video technology. That's a huge spike, obviously, over the last year. So back to your first question, which was which sectors have been hit and which have held their own. We are a service provider, so I'd say we're fairly lucky. We've had a fairly resilient year.
Very good. Well, we hope you keep it up because we all rely upon you, that's for sure. So, we talked about the year to date and we talked about first quarter, but, in terms of the outlook for 2021 and 22, I think that's the big money question. Let's see if we can put some of our panelists on the spot. What do they think the outlook would be in 2021 and 2022? Fanny, what's your assessment of next year and perhaps 2022?
I think the outlook for the supply chain logistics is a fairly positive one, but there are definitely challenges to overcome. For instance, the move from globalization to regionalization. I think this COVID-19, if anything, has taught many companies to eliminate single source dependencies. And I think now they are trying to see how they can get their supplies from their own backyard. And therefore, I think this will actually spike off even more demand for the logistics players that work on a regional level. And on top of that, of course, we all know about the e-commerce boom, which has been definitely accelerated by COVID. It was really on a high. I think it's going to go on even higher, as we can see from the spike in demand for all the online groceries, from all the panic buying, and then from also the a lot of companies now going online. I think going online essentially means that deliveries have to be sent. So I would feel that the outlook for the supply chain logistics is a very positive one. However, challenges definitely are present.
And Aditya, your thoughts?
I would think like technology will play a major role in 2021, basically with all the learnings of this year, and typically in supply chain, logistics, or any industry where consumer connect is there, technology is playing a major role. Simple tools like video chatting has made so much life easier for doing the business in a different way. So when I think like on 2021, lot of technology players will like come into picture. Predictive analytics, IoT will play a major role. 5G coming in will also play a major role in connectivity. Cybersecurity and security will be a major concern, as well as a thought area where people will try to address those issues. Looking at logistics, we are more looking at IoT as the go-to strategy for optimizing our last mile deliveries. So that's where I think it will be a major play in the to 2021.
So, I mean, I think for yourself, Edwin, the impact of 21 may also come from some upgrades in sort of gaming consoles. I hear that's in the UK and America with the release of the Xbox Series X. A huge spikes in traffic. Are you bracing yourself for that? Not just people working from home, but also gaming consoles competing with the parents trying to also do video Zoom calls?
Yeah, I think like gamings and anything with whichever way where people are outside, not with the normal world, like they are connected. So they need to be connected at home. Any tool you give them with connecting it themselves with home or getting themselves busy, people are like right now absorbing it. Gaming consoles, why virtual games, even board games have picked up to a large extent. If you see, which is beyond normal. If you see the toys and board games has picked up to a greater extent.
And Edwin?
Yeah, I mean, no, the both of them covered it, most of it, right? I mean, everything that is digital and online is prevalent at the moment. I mean, for ViewQwest as a service provider, what we do is to facilitate all this, right, and make it as smooth and as efficient for all our businesses and customers. I mean, whether it's residential, everybody's gonna need. Everyone's expectations of technology have changed, right? People want it fast, people want it efficient. So yeah, so it's gonna be busy for us next year, absolutely. From a supply chain perspective, well, we don't have a mobile arm, right? So we're internet service provider, but there's still technology that helps it, right? We facilitate LTE connections through digital transformation for businesses. So given that what Aditya and Fanny have covered, yeah, it's gonna be a busy year. So I've been always prepping everyone to. It's about redesigning right now, right, to fit into the new world.
So I think Edric will get the results to the first polling question. If we can put that up on the screen, please. So it looks like by an outright win. So in terms of how do you consider the impacts of COVID in Asia to be in the first quarter, most are taking a pretty pessimistic view on that in terms of it being down year on year. Let's perhaps see if some of those vaccines help to improve things and increase that sort of scenario. So let's also now put up the second polling question. So the second polling question is, what do you consider to be the greatest challenge facing the supply chain manager in 2021? So disruption to the supply chain logistics by people working remotely, lack of investment in supply chain innovation solutions by logistics firms, so lack of investment, lack of training and awareness regarding the latest solutions, or do you think it's the lack of reliable high data throughput connectivity? So we'll continue with the questions, and we'll come back to that polling answer. So let's delve into operations. So if I may, sort of Fanny, it's a huge complex process of supply chain. Logistic operations between the warehouse and local distribution hubs. There can often be very large distances involved. What are some of the challenges and some of the pain points facing the logistics manager?
I think one of the greatest challenge would be the lack of visibility. In order to ensure a smooth communications between the two, from the warehouse to the distribution center, the visibility of the inventory that's being transported is essential. However, if you look at the current tech that's available, I mean, you have, of course, the RFID, and then you also have like the mobile tracking solution. But however, there's always challenge with the GPS location, the stability of it, especially when the drivers are on the go. They go into the basement or they navigate around the areas of poor internet connectivity. So I think one of the greatest challenge these logistics providers they face in between the transportation from the warehouse to the distribution hubs would be the lack of visibility between the two, because we know now that in order for a distribution channel to be efficient, many of them are looking at JIT. So in order for JIT to be successful, the timeliness of things has to be really tracked properly, has to be really managed properly, but without the benefit of real-time data, that could be quite a challenge to do.
So, I mean, Aditya, in terms of the evolution of Floship, I mean, in terms of the tools, the solutions, I mean, I can imagine there are a number of tools at your disposal, data, location analytics, location tracking technologies. How did that technology landscape evolve for Floship? Did you initially start off with sort of data analytical systems and then evolve into location? How did you scale up your operations?
For us at Floship, obviously, the whole goal is to give more of traceability and visibility to the end users, both sides on the cards. So basically, one side, the customer, the shipper, or the manufacturer; on the other side, the consumer receiving the parcel. So while we are looking at this, obviously predictive analytics is on the major card where we can actually predict the volume of surplus or with the prediction of transport or the challenges or the traffic during the different seasons of the time. So these are the major issues what we face, what every user is right now facing in the world, where the visibility, as Fanny mentioned, the visibility and the traceability is the biggest challenge. And at Floship, we are trying hard to solve it and taking numerous steps to actually, like, for example, localization, the last mile connectivity. We are still dependent on certain factors, which is not in our hands. But yes, warehouse automations, real-time traceability of your stocks, real-time traceability at various checkpoints. We have facilities like dynamic address corrections and all. So we have been doing a lot of automation on our side to make sure that the movement of the parcel is as seamless as possible. But still, the challenge of last mile location based connectivity and the traceability is still not yet to be 100% sorted out. IoT, if you talk about, or if you talk about RFIDs, you talk about mobile devices, where we are using these devices as a manual ad hoc pieces to check at various different points. Somewheres these are working fine in like urban areas, or when you talk about mature cities, or when you talk about advanced countries. But when it comes about Asia, or you talk about the Southeast Asia, India, or anywhere, it doesn't work because there is no last mile systems which supports them equally. Though the solutions are available, but the support system is not there yet.
Right. Yeah, so it's quite a complex ecosystem of different domains. Edwin, I mean, I think you're our sort of telco guru. So let's sort of delve into some of the changes that might be happening in the warehouse environment. I've heard sort of, things about sort of augmented reality, wearables. I think these are all could be enabled by wireless connectivity. Do you see these as potential technologies we can help boost the supply chain manager in the warehouse? And can they does it have to be handled perhaps by a private wireless or cellular solution? And then in terms of the connectivity to the internet, does that need to be boosted as well?
Probably yes and no, depends on how much automation and technology you really intend to apply to your warehouse, right? Probably a little bit. I'm usually conservative by nature, so I'd say roll out small pieces of technology, see the impact on your bandwidth and infrastructure. But I'm a security person at heart, so actually my concern with IoT is as all these endpoints start appearing up all over the place. Part of my job as a service provider is to help secure these endpoints and make sure that data isn't lost. Right now, I mean, data loss is such a huge thing with GDPR. Every country has their own cybersecurity acts. I mean, if you as a business you lose customer data information, you're gonna get fined, right? And every endpoint, from my perspective, is an entrance, a potential entrance for trouble. So that's why I advise start small projects. Stonewall those new pieces of technology for a while, and then before you start adopting it. So what you will need is somebody who literally is look for someone who's going to be really strong from an endpoint perspective, because IoT is still growing, right? I mean, I think there'll be very few IoT security specialists out there. So look for the endpoints and see it from there, and just treat them as an endpoint, and you will be fine.
Right. Sorry, I actually have a question, if you don't mind me just
Sure.
asking this. This is actually directed at Edwin. When it comes to ISPs, telcos, I mean, traditionally logistics and transport players, right, we don't work too closely. In your opinion, how closely, right, should these partners work together, and to what level?
Traditionally, no. Let me think about that for one sec. I think they are interconnected, right? I mean, at the end of the day, as a telco, as a service provider, I mean, we are facilitating the transfer of data, right, and applications, etc. So it should be more cohesive. It's a symbiotic relationship between the supply chain, right? It's all about speed. It's all about accuracy, and your service provider should be equipped to deal with that. I mean, that should be what a service provider strives to do.
All right, thank you, Edwin.
Thank you. I think I'd like to perhaps put Fanny on the spot, if I may. I mean, in terms of, you talked about your solution, your capabilities, but I imagine there's also going to be a discussion around sort of KPIs, or key considerations for success. You're sitting down with the supply chain manager. What are those key considerations for success? What should they be focusing on?
All right. I feel that they should be focusing on adopting cloud technology, because using cloud tools actually allows them to reduce costs and increase productivity and in the supply chain, and also to look into integration. Using cutting edge integration tools will allow every system in their organization to freely share information, and this will bring about increased visibility and efficiency. And lastly, also, we look into mobility. So using cutting edge mobile technology in your supply chain will cover over a more traditional industrial equipment, can cut the cost but achieve double the effects. So I think these are the few key considerations. They can look at cloud technology, looking into integration, and looking into leveraging on mobile technology as well into their supply chain.
And Aditya, what are your thoughts about sort of risk factors? I mean, I think that's the flip side of the coin. Any particular aspects there?
For us, basically, when we look at Floship or when we look at any other logistics players, right now everybody is focusing on technology or the last mile delivery, where they are looking at mobility, they are looking at different solutions to speed up and making sure the shipment goes out, or that the tracking is to a certain extent there to both of the parties. But like as Edwin mentioned, data security is one of the key aspects one should look at in parallel, because everywhere you are sharing information with different people on the different sets, and you don't know who is handling your customer data at that given point of time. So one of the key areas or the key go-to strategy should be also including data security and data management within the organization level, both from the client side to your logistics service provider or a cloud solution, and then to the end mile delivery. So it's like a kind of integrated approach one should take in whatever piece is to be developed. I don't say like you can develop the whole end-to-end piece, but whatever modules you are getting developed or whatever piece you are automating, take care of both the ends, including the data security, because there is a major threat with GDPR and a lot of regulations coming on that side.
Yes, indeed. I think that could be very painful if not managed properly. So, Edric, I think we'll now get the answers to the previous polling question. Okay, so we have a bit of a mixed bag here, but I think there's an overall winner. So what do you consider to be the greatest challenge facing the supply chain manager in 2021? With about 49% opted for a lack of investment in supply chain innovation solutions by logistics firms. Fanny, does that surprise you in terms of that, overall, in terms of aggregate support for that question?
I think it doesn't really come as surprising to me, because I think one of the greatest factors that's actually holding companies back and implementing technology is definitely the cost. I mean, they will want to look at the ROI, and then they want to, of course, given that, first of all, we must establish that the margins in last mile deliveries are paper thin. So wanting to implement any kind of technology will have to actually match the kind of returns that they're going to get at the end of the day. That's why we have SaaS like Detrack, which actually offers a very flexible and affordable solution to these companies where they are contract free, where they are able to test out implement this solution into their ecosystem to see how it works. And there's no long-term or heavy investment required. So yes, this is definitely not really surprising to me.
Right. And actually, Edwin, the second ranking question answer is quite interesting. So lack of reliable high data throughput connectivity. So is it a question that perhaps some of the IT managers within some of these enterprises need to double down? I mean, I think, the highest you can get is a 1 gig, perhaps a 2 gig connection.
2 gig.
Should they be ramping this up to the max? Yeah,
I'm surprised. This is Singapore. I mean, there's only 40 kilometers end to end. So, there's a interest surprisingly high, to be honest, because most of the time I have trouble with is that it's a small country. Right, there's the speed is already there, so there's a lot of technologies which literally have no application in Singapore, like data accelerators, bandwidth accelerators, some of this stuff, or like faster data, pulling data from a cloud. It's just not applicable in Singapore. So I'm actually really really surprised on this this high poll. Yeah.
Okay, well, something to take to senior management to discuss. I think now Edric will put up the next question. So the next question, there we go. Sorry. So what technology do you think will have the most impact on performance and efficiency for the supply chain manager? Is it data analytics, location technology, AI and machine learning, or going to 5G for reliability and bandwidth capabilities? So please click away and provide a response to that, and I'll continue with the panel session. So in terms of TCOs, we talked about some of the key success factors, KPIs. Other issues in terms of that additional investment? Where does that investment need to go, Fanny, in terms of reducing the overall total cost of ownership? How can the supply chain manager manage that complex beast, which is total cost of ownership?
I think the supply chain manager will really need to look into solutions that do come with a sustainable cost. When we talk about sustainable cost, it means the cost actually equates to the output, and also the cost doesn't have to be upfront. So that will actually give the supply chain manager more flexibility in terms of managing the kind of solutions and the kind of phase he wishes to implement the solution. And of course, the magnitude of the solutions as well. Like I think I do agree with what Edwin mentioned earlier. Do start something small first, test it out in the ecosystem before you go all in. That will actually help to make sure that the solution is going to be a good fit to the operational need. And also at the same time, you will be able to ensure that this implementation of a phase-by-phase solution will have the security concerns being covered more easily, rather than implementing a full suite of a solution all at one time.
Right. So we're running out of time here. So I think perhaps, Ed, we're going to take some of the questions from the Q&A panel. So there's a question here which essentially sort of talks about value, generating value from IoT projects, from IoT deployments, justifying that. I mean, perhaps Aditya, what sort of IoT solutions, or what sort of solutions perhaps provide the most IoT value for the supply chain manager? Is it asset tracking? There's clearly a number of different IoT solutions. What are some of your thoughts on that?
So if you look at logistics, as there is one side, the 3PL, the second side is the mid carrier, and the third side is the third leg is basically the last mile delivery guys. So basically, when we look at all the three segment and overall the customer at one end. So when we look at different places and different size, IoT plays different roles in different places. So for example, for an warehouse, space optimization, or basically correct binning, or your basically making sure the shipment is out properly is the biggest challenge. The data on the shipment label should be the most accurate, which is the one of the key factor areas. So for that, maybe some solutions which can divine and validate the data and automate the data correction, that's the biggest solution for them. For the last mile, yes, tracking location-based delivery, real-time status of your delivery of the package. That's the challenge out there. Between in mid, when it goes out from the 3PL before it reaches to the last mile delivery guy, the challenge of product not being damaged, product kept in the right temperature, product being not mishandled, security of the product, like the is theft or whatever you take up. So these are the challenges where RFID or solutions like IoT devices based on the cost of the product also plays a role. So it depends on various regions, different IoT plays a role, different types of IoT.
Okay, thank you. And Edwin, I mean, within sort of ViewQwest, I mean, what sort of IoT solutions is ViewQwest using in terms of perhaps managing your fleet of vehicles and vans, or state of equipment?
Yeah, well, mostly, we're not such a big embracer of IoT, to be very honest, right? Yes, we have a lot of delivery men, engineers that are out there. So we give them the correct apps. Generally, it's just off the mobile device. What I do work with more interestingly are my customers who are embracing IoT. I have customers who are looking at basically, for example, like a wearable to track patients at home, right? So that's one. The pharmaceutical, we have customers who are looking at basically getting the last mile really efficient. Finding ways to basically build apps to deliver last mile delivery routes on the phone, on the wearable, to make it easier for them. So that's small of a customers, I guess. We're not very exciting as an IoT company. We're a service provider.
Right. Okay. So juice. We'll take another question. So we've got a question here. Last mile fulfillment seems to have a lot of challenges from the discussion. Can I ask what are the top 3 items which can be that need to be sorted out, and how can players in the ecosystem collaborate? So I think that's probably a question for Fanny, and then I think we'll have a follow-up from Aditya.
I think one of the greatest challenge, like I mentioned in my presentation earlier, will be the need to scale up the operation because of the increase in volume. And this increase in volume has come so suddenly, where the infrastructure of a lot of these logistics companies are not ready. And this brings me to the next challenge mentioned by this question as well, on how do you collaborate then? So if you do not have the capabilities or the necessary resources, especially in hiring drivers, how do you scale up then in such a short time? You work with another 3PL, you work with a 4PL. And given the fragmentation of how logistics has always been, it is not uncommon for the 3PLs to outsource to the 4PL and then moving down to even the 5PL. So then given this dynamics of having so many players involved in fulfilling the last mile, I think the challenge will then come in. How does this information flow goes right back up to the right people, given that so many players are involved with most likely different systems that they are using as well? So this is actually where kind of like Detrack comes in to actually provide a common platform where all the 3PLs could actually use to service the same customer and yet have the safest feedback to the different customers in a segregated format. So we have this a rather complex web of like a courier with a vendor relationship in different ways where the integration has already been done so that the information flow will still be automated and it will be seamless for these 3PLs to be able to bring back the information to feedback to the eventual retailer who have outsourced the project to them, and for the retailer to update their WMS or their ERP system. So I think the greatest challenge would then be having a common system for collaboration, and then also the fact that they have to scale up, and scaling up also doesn't just mean in terms of the fleet size, but in terms of how do you manage the other aspects, like even the route planning part. So in the past, you may be used to handling like 100, 200 addresses, but now you have to handle 1,000 addresses. So being manually looking at where these 1,000 addresses are could be a huge nightmare for these supply chain vendors.
Right. Aditya, perhaps I'll just rephrase the question, because I think one aspect I do want to get in before we close up the session is skills and workforce. I think that also must be a pain point within the supply chain process. How can the warehouse manager, supply manager upskill its workforce? What are the key areas they need to focus on in that area?
So with my limited experience, when I see the biggest change, the challenge point is data, wherein basically data format by different service providers, different 3PLs, different logistics companies, different carriers, different customers, all are in different formats. And to standardize the data is the biggest challenge in all. And most of the manpower across all of these organizations are only correcting data and putting the data in Excel files. So if we can solve that problem, which Floship and the team is trying to do that, where we are connecting all and standardizing globally all the different file formats, different taxes and duties, different rules and regulations on a single platform for a customer, where end-to-end piece is taken care by the platform itself, while you input one data and the rest of the data is taken care of. So that is where the workforce, the supply chain manager, even the whole logistics team can be optimized, and automation can play a major role there.
Right.
If and to add to it, to the previous question also, if we can have some kind of standardization organization as a global level, which is a visual thinking, where all carriers, all transport organization follow the same, like web 3.0 standards, where like similarly logistics 2.0 standards, where data has to be, or address has to be in a single format, a lot of challenges will be solved there and there itself.
Right. Very good. Thank you, Aditya. So, Edric, how are we doing? We still got some time left, or?
Actually, we're pretty much out of time. We're reaching times. Times are ending for us. Not to mean that in a very literal sense, but okay. I think what we can do is maybe show the last poll first, what the results were. Yeah. And while that's coming up, I would like to ask a very, very interesting question to Eddie, though. Reason why is a reason now that with IoT, we're talking about data transfer and also importantly, cybersecurity, right? In the logistics supply chain, all these managers need to know this. We're always looking at the biggest things that we can change and what are the big things we need to focus on and make changes, which also come as expensive. What are the small but important things that need to change so that you can kind of start that process off?
So as Edric, as Edric, as I mentioned, data is the biggest problem out here. If we can standardize the basic data formats while by different organizations and put the data correct, a lot of these challenges would be sorted out by default. Because the major challenge, what in the limited time, what I've seen across, it's not Flowship as a company, but looking at 3PLs, their transport to the ocean carriers or the freight forwarders, their freight forwarders to everyone. Each one accepts a different format of data, and there is a lot of conversion of data happening in between. But if the first start point of the data is wrong, which, like for example, if it's city name, if it's wrong, like for example, I'll just give you a smallest example. A carrier A accepts 35 characters, where a carrier B accepts 25 characters. Now, if my first carrier is 25, I've put in as 35 characters, that means my system will not allow to ship with the other carrier. So that's how basic it is, which is the if you can, and with the poll results and all, data analytics and all, yes, this is where we are playing a role to use data analytics to find out what are the standard formats and standard points, and use that as one of a key supporting or the key vitamin to optimize the whole process.
I see. So at the end of the day, it's speaking a common language across platforms.
Yes.
I see. Okay, so we are sharing the poll results. Jake, what do you make of this?
Yes, well, I think that's the second most popular word we've had the whole time. It was after new normal. It's data and data analytics. So data analytics came top with 45%, tracking in second place with 24. AI and machine learning need to work a bit harder, but just a little bit behind at 21%. So a combination of technologies and therefore skill set. So I think that gives some indications of anyone's wishing to evolve their career, what sort of skills and capabilities they perhaps need to focus on.
All right. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in IoT Connected. This is the second week, or at least the second episode that we're doing. Again, many thanks to moderator Jake and our panelists, Fanny, Edwin, and Aditya for joining us. So again, thank you so much for making this happen. And to you, the audience, The information is going to join Interchange is shown in the chat room, and it's also going to be an email that's going to be sent to you after this session. Feel free to also give us your feedback, because we want to know what you want to see at the next few sessions, and all these future topics. We'd love to hear from you. A link of the entire webinar will be emailed to you and posted on the IoT Asia Plus website as well. So once again, thank you to all our speakers and you, our audience, for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at the Interchange and having you back with us in future episodes. My name is Edric with IoT. Thank you and bye-bye.